Listen to The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, Level B2, Oxford Reading University, Part 2.
That would require significant expenses, but he had the finances to ensure his sister a brighter future. Over time, Gregor started adapting to his situation. He spent his days running up and down the walls. Sometimes he would push the chair to the wall and climb up to look out of the window. It granted him a certain sense of freedom. When Greta noticed that the position of the chair changed, she started leaving it by the window every day after cleaning. Gregor was very grateful to her for that. However, though Greta continued to care for Gregor, he noticed that she could not bear looking at him. So, he always took shelter under the couch when she entered. As for the parents, they avoided his room. Even though his mother was concerned about his state, Greta and the father prohibited her from visiting him. Seeing that Gregor enjoyed running across the walls and the ceiling, Greta decided to take all the furniture out of the room to give him more space. She asked her mother for help while the father was out. When Gregor heard their voices from behind the door, he hid under the couch. A sheet was thrown over it, and Gregor pulled it down to fully cover himself. Greta and the mother tried moving the cupboard, but it was really heavy. Then Gregor heard his mother say that they could leave some of the furniture where it was. The sight of the empty room upset her. And also, would Gregor not feel deserted without the things he had gotten used to over the years? Then, in a low whisper, she added, "Perhaps he will think that we've given up the hope that his condition is temporary." Greta did not agree. She regarded herself as a specialist in everything that concerned her brother. She insisted on taking out all the furniture except for the couch. The mother did not object. With a lot of effort, they carried the cupboard out of the room. A confusing thought occurred to Gregor. For some mysterious reason, he had wanted the room to be emptied out before he heard his mother's voice. Now he realized that the furniture had to stay. Otherwise, he would soon forget everything that connected him to his previous human life. When the two women went to the living room to rest for a while, Gregor hurried from under the couch and looked around anxiously. He wanted to rescue at least something, but what? He saw the picture on the wall and crawled up to cover it entirely with his body. Now, no one would take it away. When the women returned, the mother spotted a brown shadow on the wall. Realizing that it was Gregor, she screamed and collapsed on the couch. "Gregor!" shouted Greta, casting a severe look at him. Then she hurried into the kitchen to look for some smelling salts. Gregor followed her, willing to help. When Greta turned around and saw the unexpected visitor, she dropped the medicine bottle. It broke, and a piece of glass cut Gregor's face. Without delay, Greta grabbed all the bottles she could see, rushed back into Gregor's bedroom, and shut the door behind her.
Even more audiobooks in English. Listen, read, and improve your English with the classic bestsellers. In the Ewa app, you can check the translation and the transcription of unknown words, add them to your personalized list, and play word games. Check out appewa.com.
At that moment, the doorbell rang. Greta hurried to open the door. It was Gregor's father. "Mother passed out, but she's better now. Gregor broke loose," exclaimed Greta. "I told you this would happen," said the father in a worried voice. Gregor understood that his father had interpreted Greta's words in his own way. He thought that Gregor had committed some act of violence against his mother. Gregor wanted to show that he only had good intentions, so he rushed into the hall and stood by the entrance to his room. He looked at his father and did not recognize him. After getting a job at the bank, he became stronger and healthier. He stood tall in his blue uniform, looking very proud. He stared at Gregor and then started throwing apples at him. Gregor could not think or move. One apple flew by, nearly injuring him, and then another landed right on his back and got stuck. The flash of sharp pain almost made Gregor blind. The last thing he saw was his mother running out of his room toward his father and begging him not to kill Gregor. 3. No one dared to remove the apple from Gregor's back. He never recovered from the injury, and his capacity for movement became extremely limited. Now he could only crawl very slowly and was not able to climb onto the ceiling. Feeling sympathy for him, Gregor's family started to leave the door open at night, and he watched them. His mother sewed, his sister learned French in hopes of getting a promotion at work, and his father sat in his bank uniform and complained about his dull existence. Gregor also learned that his family were selling their jewelry to earn more money. As the household budget decreased, they also got rid of their maid and replaced her with an old cleaning lady. Gregor was troubled by a constant feeling of shame. He could not aid his family, and his presence caused them a lot of trouble. Gregor barely slept or ate. At times, he desired to take over his family's affairs again, and his mind was filled with memories of his boss, the chief clerk, his colleagues, and some friends he had made while traveling. Other times, he was mad at his family for the way they treated him. Greta did not seem to care about him much anymore. In the morning, she pushed his plate into the room and hurried to work. In the evening, she swept the floor without paying attention to the fact that he was starving himself. Every time, she tried to get out as fast as possible, and soon the room was filled with dust and dirt. Once the mother cleaned the room herself, and it made Greta deeply offended. She broke into tears and screamed that no one could clean Gregor's room but her. Meanwhile, Gregor sat in the corner and wished they had closed the door so he would not witness the depressing scene. The old maid had been terrified of Gregor, whereas the new cleaning lady was not. But they were not on friendly terms either, since she constantly opened the door to simply stare at him for a brief moment. Gregor hated being disturbed like that, and at one point he became aggressive and tried to attack her. The cleaning lady threatened him with a chair, so he had to back off. Gregor stopped eating entirely. Meanwhile, his parents rented out the apartment to 3 gentlemen. Since there was not much space, they piled some of the furniture and the cleaning lady's supplies in Gregor's room. Trying to make room for himself, Gregor moved the objects about. He enjoyed it, though it left him extremely tired. One night, the cleaning lady forgot to close Gregor's door while the 3 gentlemen were at home. They were having dinner in the living room, and Greta played the violin in the kitchen. The gentlemen invited her to play for them, and Greta happily agreed. Attracted by the sounds of the violin, Gregor emerged from his room and moved toward the living room. He was covered in dust and dirt and looked even more frightening than before. For a while, nobody noticed him, as everyone was focused on Greta's playing. But soon the gentlemen seemed to lose interest. They started talking to each other quietly and smoking. Gregor found it offensive. His sister's playing was magnificent. He desired to approach her, to tell her to come to his room, since no one appreciated her playing here. He wanted to tell her that he would like her to go to university and devote herself to her musical career. "Mr. Samsa!" screamed one of the gentlemen all of a sudden. He pointed at Gregor, who had crawled to the middle of the room. Gregor's father grew anxious, though it was evident that the gentlemen were more interested than frightened. They stared at Gregor, then asked his father what it was all about. Struggling to provide them with an appropriate explanation, the father urged the gentlemen to go to their room. "Excuse me," said one of them, "but considering the horrible conditions in this flat, I will immediately leave. Of course, I will not pay for the days I spent here." "Neither will we," said his friends, and the 3 residents retired to their room. Gregor's father fell into his seat and stared at the floor. Gregor lay in the middle of the room and did not move, partly because he was scared, partly because he was too weak from hunger. Then Greta spoke. "Mother, Father, I don't know about you, but I can't bear this anymore," she declared. "I refuse to call this creature my brother. The sooner we get rid of it, the better, and I don't think anyone will blame us for this." "What should we do?" asked her father. "If only he could understand us. Then perhaps we could come to some sort of agreement." "You have to abandon the ridiculous idea that this being is Gregor," said Greta. "We have been harming ourselves by believing it this whole time. If it had been him, he would have left long ago out of respect for us and for himself." Gregor began to turn around. Alarmed by his movement, Greta screamed and hid behind her father's back, but she soon realized that Gregor did not mean to harm anyone. He returned to his room, hoping until the end that they would ask him to come back. But they did not. As soon as he was inside, his sister sprang forward and locked the door. Gregor lay on the floor, unable to move, and thought about his family with love. If anything, he wanted to disappear more than his sister wanted him to. He spent the night staring into the darkness, and when the sun came out, his head struck the floor. Gregor Samsa was dead. 4. The next morning, the cleaning lady discovered Gregor's body. The family instantly felt relieved. They kicked the 3 gentlemen out of their apartment and decided to fire the cleaning lady later that evening after she had gotten rid of the dead insect. Then they all excused themselves from work and took a ride to the countryside. As they rode, Greta, her mother, and her father discussed their prospects and discovered that they were quite self-sufficient. Now that the 3 of them had relatively stable jobs, they could live in peace and comfort. They resolved to move into a different flat that was smaller and better located. Greta became lively again. She had appeared pale lately, but now the color was coming back to her face. As they were talking, Mr. and Mrs. Samsa noticed that she had developed into a stunning young woman, and both thought that it would soon be time to find her a decent husband. When they reached their destination, Greta was the first one to get out of the tram, stretching her young body and confirming her parents' observations.
Hit the like button and subscribe to get more free English audiobooks. And now, listen to another story.